The interior scorers, I think my top 5, 3 we already talked about. I think Wilt, Kareem, and Shaq have to be in one of those top 3. I'm actually going to put Hakeem in here because even though Hakeem has a great offensive move, I don't think his peak was actually that high for scoring. So like he could, but like he never actually led the league in scoring. And I think he topped out around maybe like 28 points or something like that.
Around there.
I think, so I mean, we're talking about all time. So I think interior wise, Bob Pettit, 26 points a game has to be kind of up there because like he never averaged less than 20. The fact that he has like I'm not talking about like how he would do today's era. I'm talking about in his era.
Okay, if that's the case, then all right. Because otherwise, if Hakeem played Bob Pettit,
no, I'm not saying
Hakeem would kill him in a post. So,
I'm not saying Hakeem's going to play Bob Pettit.
Because Hakeem is far superior with his post.
Yeah.
Right? It's not even close. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm just talking about in the era, right?
You know, in my opinion, though, when I look at a guy, how good is he at scoring?
Yeah.
I don't really look at his scoring average most of the time. I mean, it's a factor. It's definitely a factor, his scoring average. But at the same time, what I want to focus more on is how dominant is his offense? Is his offense, how unstoppable is his offense?
Mm-hmm.
And is it something that other teams are like, do we have to double? Do we have to triple this guy? Otherwise, we're screwed. And Hakeem is definitely one of those guys. Yeah. And that's why for me, I would actually definitely put Hakeem as one of the best all-time big man scorers.
Yeah, you can put McHale, even though McHale, he never his career average was only 17 points or something like that, but he had enough unstoppable post moves, right?
And I would put McHale in there as well.
Yeah.
Because what I look at instead, because there's so many factors that determines whether you lead the league in scoring and whatnot.
Yeah.
For example, sometimes there's certain players, they play on a team that's not very good, and they get the green light to shoot as much as they want. And then, so of course, naturally, they're going to lead the league in scoring. And also, there's other players where, they're naturally the team isn't that good, so every game is close. So they end up playing a lot more minutes and taking a lot more shots, so they get more scores too. But then there's other guys who, they're so dominant that quite often you're already blowing out the other team, and you're not playing as much minutes because you're already up by 20 points in the fourth quarter, and you can sit out in the rest of the fourth quarter. So you're not scoring as much. But you're so dominant in the first 3 quarters scoring already that you're up by 20 already. So that's why, we shouldn't just look at the scoring average.
Sure.
So what we should look at is really just their actual skill and their actual ability.
So that's actually hard without actually having going through tape of every single player in every history and looking at their game, right?
And that's why,
And for Pettit, it's especially hard because he played in the 50s.
But exactly.
So, but I'm just looking at him like he was so much more than any other guy of his era, right? You talk about the next best guy was like Dolph Schayes, who was 20 points a game, and he was 26 points. Like this guy's way better, right?
Like for me, if I like to watch the guys play, and then when I see them play, Hakeem, when you watch him play, he's definitely one of the 5 easily greatest interior scorers of all time because he's got most of the skills that no one else has except for Kareem. Yeah. I mean, the guy's footwork is the best ever in NBA history. In the post, literally.
Him and McHale.
Him and McHale has 2 best footwork in the post ever.
Okay.
And then Hakeem is great on the fadeaway, on the turnaround jump shot, and he's great on the hook shot. So that's why when Hakeem plays and he's posting up, not only does he have the greatest footwork in NBA history, but he can actually turn either way because he can turn right and take the turnaround fadeaway jump shot, but he can turn left and then take the hook shot. With the greatest footwork ever. So for me, by far, he's one of the greatest scorers ever in the post. Yeah. It's not close. I mean, and all you gotta do is also look at the head-to-head matchups. For example, if we're putting Shaq down there, but when they went head-to-head, Hakeem actually scored a bit more than Shaq. When they went head-to-head.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just looking overall in their careers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, after Pettit is another guy, probably not matched up to Hakeem in this era, but Elgin Baylor, I think. Just in his era, right? Yeah. He has the 3rd highest scoring average all time, right? He scored 71 points a game before, right? 61 points in the finals, still record. Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm just looking at, I always basically judge on their era. So, I feel like for their era, they were just far ahead of everyone else. So,
right.
So put them up there.
Yeah, for me, it's just, it's kind of tough sometimes when we take a guy from an earlier era during that competition, and then suddenly if we're going to drop out a guy like Hakeem that has all the skills, and then I think
it's hard because if you take Elgin Baylor just from that era and put him in Hakeem, no, Hakeem's more skill, but if you do that time travel stuff, then maybe Elgin Baylor has access to the same amount of training and equipment and medical advances and everything that the modern generation has.
Mm-hmm.
So if you try to play like the time travel machinations and stuff, I guess it gets really complicated.
I think he still wouldn't have the natural ability of Hakeem. So that's the thing. Oh, another reason why we're saying that why I'm saying Hakeem might be one of the greatest big man scorers of all time is because he's one of the few big men. Not only does he have some of the best footwork ever in the post, and he can do turnaround fadeaway and he can do hook shot, but on top of that, he's one of the few big men that actually is quick on his feet. So if he's playing against a big man or a center that's bigger than him, Hakeem would actually take the guy and face him up from the perimeter, and he can just dribble and cross the guy up like he's a perimeter player. So, like for example, if he's playing against like a smaller guy, his footwork in the post, his hook, his turnaround will kill him. But if he's playing against a bigger guy, all he has to do is catch the ball from the free throw line and then turn and then pivot and face the guy up, and then he can drive right by the guy, either off the crossover or whatnot, just like he was a guard. And that's one thing that most big men can't do. But Hakeem can do both, and that makes him pretty much unstoppable, like literally unstoppable, the guy.
And, another guy I forgot to mention is Bob McAdoo. Bob McAdoo was actually a pretty dominant scorer in his prime. Back in the 70s, I think he won 3 scoring titles in a row, which is pretty impressive. I think he had a pretty short prime. I think it was just those 3 years. But in his short prime, he was really, really dominant. He was averaging 34 a game or something like that. And I guess you can consider him an interior scorer, but he was also kind of a perimeter scorer as well. He was one of those guys that was really ahead of his time. He could post you up. He could also score on the perimeter. I watched all these horse videos with him and Pete Maravich, and there used to be horse tournaments, right? It was like him, Pete Maravich, George Gervin, Bubble Hawkins, who's pretty forgotten. But I think Bob McAdoo he's up there with an array of different scoring moves. So I definitely put Bob McAdoo up there. He's like a prototypical stretch big, way before like stretch bigs was popular. So I would think he'd be one of the guys from the 70s I think would do pretty well today. He mostly played power forward and center, but he could shoot from the perimeter as well, right? He was like a prototypical stretch big. I guess kind of like Jerry Lucas, but he was more dominant than Jerry Lucas, right? So, Jerry Lucas was also good, but he was not the scorer that McAdoo was. McAdoo was a pretty insane scorer in his prime. But I would put him up there as well. One other guy is Karl Malone. So Karl Malone scored second most points in NBA history. I know he had John Stockton and everything, but the dude averaged like 25 points a game. And I think he did this for like 18 seasons. Yeah. So that, I mean, just for consistency, you got to give it to Karl Malone.
Consistency, longevity, sure. But in terms of how great he is as a scorer, maybe not as good as the best. But I think longevity, for sure. But in terms of his actual just pure scoring ability, I don't think he's at the level of obviously the guys we're talking about. Yeah, definitely not the level of Hakeem and Kareem and all these guys. Yeah, and Shaq. Yeah, like he won't be as dominant. He's not as dominant.
So he has a high scoring average, but he's not as.
The high scoring average doesn't mean you're dominant. Sometimes it comes back to, like I said, sometimes you're so dominant, you're already up by 20 points and you're not playing as many minutes, so your scoring doesn't have to be that high. And that's why sometimes if you saw Shaq during the Lakers years, he might not be leading the league in scoring.
And you're right, like, it depends on a lot of factors, too. Like,
exactly.
Karl Malone had John Stockton, Hakeem never had John Stockton.
Yeah.
He never had anyone close to John Stockton.
Like, perfect example of Shaq, right? Because, like, Shaq is definitely one of the most dominant low-post scorers of all time. I mean, without a doubt, he's definitely one of the most dominant.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's ever led the league in scoring before.
He's done it twice.
Has he? Okay.
But he's never gone over 30 points a game.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of.
But the thing is, if you saw when Shaq was playing, say, in his Laker years, during the championship years, even though he never gone over 30 points, it doesn't mean he's not dominant. Because when he was so dominant offensively that quite often they were like blowing out the other teams by 15, 20 points in the fourth quarter. He didn't even have to play the fourth quarter anymore. So, of course, he's not going to be scoring as much. But it doesn't mean he wasn't dominant.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he was playing in a triangle offense where you have to share the ball.
It's a different story in the playoffs. I think in the playoffs he has like 35 or something like that.
He gets like regular 40-20s, 40 points, 20 rebounds, back-to-back sometimes in the playoffs. So then at the same time, you're playing in a triangle offense and you're sharing the ball as well, right? So I don't think scoring average is actually the main thing, but really just looking at the player and seeing how dominant and how unstoppable they are actually in the paint. Now, Malone's a great player. He's a very great player. But I wouldn't put him at the level of some of those other guys. I would actually put I would actually honestly put Tim Duncan in there as well as some of the best interior scorers as well because his footwork and his fundamentals are so impeccable.
We never think of Tim Duncan as a scorer.
Yeah,
really.
but unfortunately, he is actually him along with McHale and Hakeem are three of the greatest big men for footwork.
The post moves,
The post moves, footwork, fundamentals. Tim Duncan is right up there, some of the best. And honestly, Duncan, if he wants, he can score more points, but he's just a team player.
Right.
You know, so he's playing the right way. He's making the pass when he has to, and it's kind of like when I said when Shaq was playing under Phil Jackson. Shaq finally learned how to be a great passer, using his dominance to actually open the game up for his teammates and making the right pass. Duncan always had that. Duncan catches the ball. He's always looking for people to pass to off of the post. Great passer too, Duncan was. So that's why his scoring average isn't always as high.
Yeah.
But Duncan fundamentally, in field goal percentage wise, everything. The guy was actually one of the best scorers I've seen in the post. He would when I look at the best big men scoring guys.
Yeah.
I don't look at scoring average. Instead, I would think if I want to win a championship, is this the guy that I want to run the offense through?
Okay.
Can I run the offense through this guy and actually get a championship level offense and actually win a title with this guy? Right?
Okay.
Because there's a lot of guys that can give you 30 points a game.
Yeah.
But I'm like Iverson can give you 30 points a game. But I would think, can I actually win a championship by running the offense through that guy? I don't think so. But a guy like Duncan, he might give you like 22, 24 points a game. But I'm like, you know what? If I run the offense through him, I can win a championship. And that's what I look at as the best scorers of all time. For me anyways.
So you say Duncan's a better interior scorer than Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, those guys.
I would take Duncan because he's got the size and he's got better.
Even though he has less lower scoring average, everything. Yeah.
Exactly, because he can be a championship level scorer that you actually run your offense through. Whereas I think it's a little bit tougher.
He's the type of guy that only does what he needs to, right?
Yeah.
Like he'll put up. Actually, Duncan will put up points if he needs to put up.
Exactly,
points.
exactly. Like for example, when they're playing in 03, I think
2003, that was his best.
Exactly, in 03 when they're playing the Lakers in the playoffs, Duncan was killing them. Duncan was killing them offensively and everything. So he can do it when he has to. He just plays the right way. And
he can turn it up here. Yeah,
exactly. So Duncan, scoring wise, pretty amazing. Along with Hakeem. See, these are the guys: Kareem, Hakeem, Duncan, Shaq. Offensively, I can win an offense. I can win a championship. They run the offense through them.
So okay, cool. That's your top. That's my top.